Hello and welcome to our series, Literacy Love. My name is Kristen Adams and I'm a staff development facilitator at the Carbon-Lehigh Intermediate Unit. And today we are going to be discussing vocabulary. Our goal is to experience and enhance your instructional strategies that promote academic vocabulary. So let's get started. As in any classroom, one of the most important things we want to do is to create culture. So we're going to warm up with the letter game. So I'm going to say my name, Kristen. And when I say Kristen, I would call on somebody else in the room to say a word that starts with the last letter of my name. So never. If that person said never, the next word that they would say would be rainbow. Rainbow would be water. Looking at the last letter of water, R, river. River, red. Red, drip. This is a fun game to increase your students' love for language and words, and that is ultimately our goal. We want students to love language. So let's get started. I want you to now pretend that you are in my classroom and I put this question up on the board. What is a dingle hopper? Now take out a piece of paper, jot it somewhere down. What is a dingle hopper? What would you write down? Oftentimes as teachers, we might give a word and then give a definition. If we were in a virtual setting, I could put an icon that looks like the one on the screen with the 3 dots that would indicate that I want you to type in the chat, what is a dingle hopper? Next question, what is a snarfblat? You could have the same routine and procedure. If you want them to do the 3 dots and type something in the chat, write it on a piece of paper. Now, if we were going to be teaching this, boys and girls, you don't have a lot of information to go by. So let's take a look at something that might help you understand these 2 words, dingle hopper and snarfblat. And here is a little clip. Here it comes.
Whoa, what a swim.
Scuttle, look what we found. Yeah, we're in a sunken ship and it was really creepy.
Human stuff, huh? Hey, let me see. Look at this. Wow, this is special. This is very, very unusual.
What? What is it?
It's a dingle hopper. Humans use these little babies to straighten their hair out. See, just a little twirl here and a yank there and boy, oh, yeah, I got an aesthetically pleasing configuration of hair that humans go nuts over.
A dingle hopper. What about that one?
Ah, this I haven't seen in years. This is wonderful. A banded, bulbous snarfblat.
Oh.
Now, the snarfblat dates back to prehistorical times when humans used to sit around.
So now, after viewing that clip, what is a dingle hopper? Can you add to your definition? Go ahead and take a look at your piece of paper and add to your definition of dingle hopper and snarfblat. This is just one way that you engage your students in learning and learning new vocabulary. You create experiences for them and you allow them to understand language in a way that is meaningful to them. And then provide some way to take a check for understanding. So a close is an excellent example to do that. A dingle hopper is blank. A snarfblat is blank. So the dingle hopper is our fork and the snarfblat is that pipe dating back to prehistoric times. So as teachers, let's take a step back and reflect at this. What strategies did you use in order to understand these words? Which of these strategies do you regularly use while teaching? I'm going to pause for a second. I want you to think about the strategies you use when you introduce new vocabulary. Some of the things that we did today is we asked a question to activate prior knowledge. And if you realize most of the students in your classroom don't understand that word, then you're embedding a video clip, a GIF, anything, an image that's allowing them to activate that knowledge. And then you're solidifying it by telling them what the definition is. There are many strategies, and our goal today is that you learn some and take them away. Let's take a look at some research and did you know? Take a minute to read this. This is so important to remember that our students might come to us with a deficit in the words that they know, understand, or have heard. And it is our job as educators to expose them to the words. If we don't use them, who will? So think about your content. Think about words that are important to know. We must explicitly teach them to our students. So let's take a look at a little bit on some more research on vocabulary. Difficult or uncommon vocabulary is the #1 factor in student comprehension and difficulty learning. A vocabulary deficit is the primary cause of achievement gap. And students from low-income households enter school with smaller vocabularies than their affluent peers. Vocabulary instruction must be systematic, intense, and efficient. So let's take a minute here, and I want you to think about what strategies do you use to help students learn new vocabulary. One of the ways that you can create wait time and space is by using online timers and tools. Classroom Screen is a great way that you can add a timer in any amount of time that you would like. Another one is the online stopwatch. And when you use the online stopwatch, you can use the stopwatch to count up or to count down. So let's think for 30 seconds about some of those strategies and go ahead and jot some of them down. Now that you have identified some strategies, I want you to put yourself in the position of a student. And I want you to think even from your own lens. Have you ever felt frustrated because you didn't have the knowledge you needed to comprehend something you're reading? Have you ever found that students lack the background knowledge that they need to, in order to be successful, or the vocabulary is problematic in their learning? It happens. So let's take a look at reading a text. Here's the text we're going to take a look at. We're going to take a look at this from the lens of a 3rd grade student. This came right out of Charlotte's Web. "Where's Papa going with that axe?" said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. "Out to the hog house," replied Mrs. Arble. "Some pigs were born last night." "I don't see why he needs an axe," continued Fern, who was only 8. "Well," said her mother, "one of the pigs is a runt. It is very small and weak, and it will never amount to anything. So your father has decided to do away with it." Let's take a step back and think of this from the lens of a 3rd grader. What's some of the language in here that might be tricky for a 3rd grade student to understand? Well, an axe might be something that they haven't experienced or seen before. Hog house, amount to anything, do away with it. Those type of expressions and vocabulary are critical to understand in order to have a full picture of what's happening in this text. Here are some of the reasons why it's difficult for students to read text. It could be complex. There could be obscure references they haven't heard. Syntactically, it could be complex. There are archaic vocabulary that we no longer use, and dialogue can be confusing to students. So what can we do to support them? We want to allow them to have images and pictures so that they can have success. Presuming that your students are automatic word recognizers, reading with fluency, there are still obstacles for them to overcome. Many of them don't have the background knowledge, and we know that knowledge builds on knowledge. A very complex text is made more comprehensible when the prior knowledge is greater. So the more that we can scaffold our students and build that background knowledge, the more they're going to have the tools they need to comprehend that. As you can see, we put images on the screen as well. What is an axe? A hog house, a runt, all of those things that help students understand. You could preload that before you're starting to dissect the text even further. Let's try it with a passage about dolphins. Can you read this? What makes it challenging to decipher? If I were a student in your class, maybe these are all the words that I know. Dolphins, to breathe through there, and once again to their underwater. Can I make meaning with that? Think of how it would be as a student in your class when you don't have that academic and vocabulary that you need. You don't have that tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary that we're going to introduce to our students and that they need in order to be successful. So here's the passage we're going to use today. As a teacher, one of the things you want to do is introduce them to different strategies. So let's say I took this small little paragraph about dolphins. I want to activate their learning through a strategy called Teach, Heard, Clueless. So take a piece of paper, fold it in thirds. At the top of your paper, I want you to write a T, an H, and a question mark or a C. We're going to use that little paragraph and we're going to show you how you can teach your students to start to process words that are unknown. I want you to take these words that are on the screen now: descend, surface, marine, herring, prey, locate, and dolphin, and think of it through the lens of a third grader. Every third grader is going to have a different knowledge bank. And when you give them the structure in place, you're telling them, I want you to put them in columns. I can teach it. I've heard of this word, or I'm absolutely clueless. They're making meaning for themselves. They're taking those words and they're ranking them in a way that is their level. So maybe some of your students in your classroom can teach the word surface. I'm guessing everyone in your classroom probably have heard or at least can teach what a dolphin is. Where can you find it? When you start to see the students put those words in those 3 columns, then you can start to group them collaboratively and let them learn and grow together. Maybe you notice that a lot of your students don't know, let's say, for example, the word locate, and that's in the clueless column. That is a word that you're going to need to take time to teach explicitly. So that's what we would do with those words. We would take each one of those words and you would allow each student to do their very best to rank those words, looking carefully at those ones that a lot of your students are in the room are clueless. If you have some students that can teach multiple words, let them teach them to the class. Have them give an example. All of the students have digital access in some ways, especially with the learning environment we are now. Can they show an image on their computer? Can they put one of those images into a Google slide for the whole class to access? It's very important that we keep in mind the tiers of vocabulary when we're teaching vocabulary. This is what I mean when I'm talking about the tiers of vocabulary. Our tier 1 words are those basic words that are commonly used. They're used in everyday language. For example, I would guess that most students, almost all, would know what a dolphin is, if not all of them. Our tier 2 words are academic words. They appear frequently, but they're across content areas. Analyze, restrict, foundation. And then we get to the tier 3 words. Specifically, when we get to the upper levels, there's a lot of tier 3 content vocabulary. In our primary grades, there's a lot of content vocabulary when you're in specific content areas. So let's take a look again at our tiers that we have. So for example, our tier 1 is our dolphin. Tier 2, descend. Tier 3, marine. You can start to rank those words for your students, and maybe that's something you do before they come to you as a lesson, and you start to look, you know what, there's a lot of tier 2, there's a lot of academic language that I need to make sure that they understand before I get to the content. So this is a good way for you to start to look through your vocabulary words and start to determine which words are most important that you explicitly see that is going to help drive your instruction in terms of vocabulary. When we look at the learner's pyramid, as you can see, that 90%, the very active stage of learning, is when you teach others. That's why it's really important to use activities like Teach, Heard, and Clueless. We want our students to have an opportunity to share with each other and share the knowledge they have. That is a very active form of it. If we go to the very top, that lecture, that 5%, all you do is listening. But then look what happens when you start embedding the vocabulary into reading. We start adding visuals, we start demonstrating those words, we start practicing together, and then we start teaching each other. That's how we really build and develop good habits in terms of our learners pyramid. So let's take a look at this again. How is a student's understanding impacted when vocabulary acquisition is absent? So let's go back to what we started with. See all those words that are highlighted, all our tier 2 and tier 3 that are grayed out? That is a lot of language. You need to determine as a teacher what is the most important that they need to be taught in order that they can comprehend that text. What other language, ascend and descend, those content, those academic language, maybe you're talking about that in terms of math as well. There's a lot of vocabulary here. So that's why it's critical that students have direct and explicit instruction with vocabulary. Vocabulary is the glue that holds the stories, ideas, and content together. It makes comprehension accessible for all your students. And that's what we really want. We want all of our students to have access to the curriculum, and by allowing students to have opportunities to explore vocabulary, to see images and pictures, and have an opportunity to practice with you and teach each other, that's how we really start to support our students. How else can we support our students? Well, we must engage them in reading complex texts despite their independent level. They must hear this vocabulary from you, whether you're reading it to them during a read aloud, or maybe you're just taking a time every single day to read a novel or an informational text with them. They must hear it from you. If they're not hearing it from you, some of our students might not hear these words at all. We need to explicitly and implicitly teach words that appear more frequently. Some words we're going to have to spend a lot more time diving in and looking at that understanding. And some of them right on the spot, you could tell them, oh, locate. Locate means to find. We can implicitly teach that. So what does that look like? Here are some activities that can help guide your vocabulary instruction. And we're going to look at these today, starting with our word sorts. There on the slide deck, there is a host of different word sorts that you can use. You can sort words by many different things. So if we take a look at our word sorts, we can see that we could sort them by many different things. We can sort them into categories by meaning. We could do an open sort, like sort them the whatever way you think they fit, or a closed sort. We're giving them specific criteria we want each word to go under. We could also do the same thing with sounds. So if we take a look at the primary example with when we're looking at word sorts, we can sort the words by picture cards and naming each of those pictures, and we can differentiate it. Maybe we have a low-level student that only knows a few sounds, but they can understand that and sun would be a drag and drop in here. This is something that you can make in Google Slides, and you can add to it and manipulate it depending on the level of your students. And the nice thing about this is you are differentiating as well. You could assign different slides to different students to explore. So I highly recommend that you use word sorts. If you're a science or a math teacher, there are links in here that will take you to different sorts that you can use. For upper level high school students, there's all types of high school math sorting cards that you can use as well. The next technique that is extremely helpful is called shades of meaning. And if you were to go to any Home Depot, Lowe's, you would see all of the paints, and they're all on one card with the different shades. This is a great way to help students understand that vocabulary is connected and there are many different meanings of words. So created for you, and it will be linked right into the slide deck, is a palette that will help you to see how you can use this. So you could assign students different words and then allow them to explore them. So if you're using the word suggest, what other words build on that? Illustrate, shows, and you can see the continuum of the different words and the shades of meaning. So it created for you is a slide deck that has different color palettes for you to use and to add words on and have students add their own words. Another example of this is a digital word wall. In digital word walls, this website is excellent. This teacher shows you how to create all different types of digital word walls depending on what your students need. You could have each student create their own digital word wall in their Google Classroom where they can reference and start to sort words. You could have words already sorted for them of content that's important. So let's say you were going to be teaching a unit on geometry. The nice thing about this is you can then, you see each individual word is on its own slide. What you can do as well is you can then allow the students to be able to see all of them in one order if you would like them to. So you could have each student working on a different word and defining it and adding a picture, adding words to help them. You could take words out for them. So let's say a student doesn't need this word, they already understand circumference and they understand arc. You can differentiate your word list while you're working with your students as well. Here's another example of a digital word wall using story elements. And remember, when you go to teach the vocabulary, if you're using it digitally and it's in their Google Classroom or in wherever you keep your work for your students, they can then have specific words that are pointed towards the words that they know. So if you're going back to one of the techniques I first showed you, all of the words that they're clueless could be part of their digital word walls. It's really important that we connect images and pictures or realia for our English language learners and many other learners. So make sure that there's an opportunity for our students to be able to depict some of the concepts that you want them to master. Another activity that helps solidify vocabulary is the Fritzler Model. The Fritzler Model is used in many different ways, but here is an example of a Jamboard that you can use for the Fritzler Model. In the middle, you would type the word, and then in the boxes, definitions, characteristics, examples, and non-examples. You could have multiple Jamboards. You could have students working collaboratively. Maybe one group is in the Jamboard 1, another group's in Jamboard 2. Or if you do not have access to Jamboard, you can create the Fritzler Model or something similar to that, depending on what you need, and a Google Slides. The next technique is called VisuWords. And VisuWords is an online tool that will help you understand and explore words. So let's say that we are going to use the word locate. If a student types that word or any word into the top where it says VisuWords, you will start to see the word locate. When you hover over top of it, so here's locate, place, or site, it will give you the definition and example. And when you double click on it, it will take you to other words that now extend this word. Now it can take us to the word position or post. And as you can see, the code on the upper left-hand corner, they can tell if it's a noun, verb, adjective, or adverb. And as the students keep clicking, the words continue to grow and build. This is a great example to show students how our English language is complex and many words can mean the same thing. Now I want you to take a minute and I'm going to take us to our classroom screen and I'm going to give you 1 minute to think what stuck with you today about teaching vocabulary. I'm going to set the timer for 1 minute. Please jot something down that stuck with you today about teaching vocabulary. Ready? Go. As you can see, the timer starts to go to red when they're nearing the end. You're finishing up your thoughts on what stuck with you. If we were all together, I might bring out my dice, roll the dice. All right, anyone born in the 6th month of June, share out with us something that stuck with you. This is a nice, easy anchor chart that you can create in your classroom as well. You could number your students, however many you have. They could place a Post-it note right on the screen of something that stuck with them. You can do the exact same thing with a Google slide. Here's a copy of an exit ticket that you could use in your classroom that would allow students to show what they know by putting what stuck with them. So if Mike is number 1, and if you're in elementary and you don't have them numbered, or in high school and you don't have your students numbered, they can type what stuck with them in the box right there. You can give each student their individual slide and they can continue to add for the week. So maybe you want to use this for your weekly vocabulary check-in and they'll just add to it. On Monday I learned, blah, blah, blah. I learned. So that's just a few ways to use an exit ticket. Thank you so much for joining me today as we explored vocabulary. As we launch into the rest of our February series, feel free to check back for our Building Vocabulary that will launch on February 4th, Scaffolding on February 10th, on February 17th, Reading Strategies, February 23rd, Analysis, and February 25th, Supporting Struggling Readers. Please click on the Act 48 credit. Make sure that you select the appropriate session that you attended today and fill out the exit ticket with all the information in order to receive your Act 48 credit. Again, thank you for joining us. Feel free to go back to January and take a look at any of our differentiation videos. They are available for you for free Act 48 credit for the month of February. So if you would like to take a look at that, they are available on the CILU website. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions or anything that you need, feel free to email me. Everything else will be listed in the YouTube channel. All of the links to this PowerPoint and all of the resources used today. Thank you.